We bring you our next session, which is mainstreaming and digitizing Bharat. Battlefront or emerging miracle. Please put your hands together for our esteemed group of panelists. We have Mr. Amitabh Kant, CEO, Niti Aayog, Mr. V. Vaidyanathan, Chairman and Managing Director, Capital First, Mr. Akhil Bansal, Deputy CEO, KPMG India, and of course, we have Mr. Bharat Shah, Executive Director, ASK Group. The session will be moderated by Ms. Shereen Bhan, Managing Editor, CNBC TV 18. Can we have a round of applause for our esteemed group of panelists? Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for joining us here on this special discussion. The time starts now. 39 minutes is what we have to talk about how do we mainstream digital India. Post the 8th of November, digital India has been identified essentially with cashless India, or now less cash India, or broadly financial inclusion. But digital India, when it was envisaged by the government, when it was put forward as a mission, as part of its mission by the government, had a lot more to it. It included sectors like education, healthcare. It talked about how the government can use technology to enhance the experience for consumers, how government services can be accessed by citizens in a much more meaningful way. So I want to start by talking about what happened post the 8th of November, where we saw a big spike in digital transactions, expectedly so, and that was because people had absolutely no choice. But since then, we've actually seen a decline, but I'm told that in the month of March, again, there has been an uptick as far as digital transactions are concerned. It is not something that's going to happen overnight. It is going to take a lot of effort on the part of everyone involved, of all stakeholders, to ensure that this is an ecosystem that is developed. So let me start by asking Mr. Amitabh Kant, sir, post the 8th of November, we saw that sharp spike. And as I pointed out, there was no choice, so people had to go digital. But in the month of January, in the month of February, we've seen those numbers decline. As the withdrawal limits were lifted by banks, lifted by the Reserve Bank of India, we've seen people move back to cash. As the SBI chairman, Arundhati Bhattacharya, told me in a conversation that we had, that her big fear is that people shouldn't go back to their old habits. How concerned are you today, and where do you see this now headed?
Shereen, two things. First of all, digital, as you rightly said, digital India is much more than digital payment. It really means about using technology to leapfrog across sectors for India: health, education, nutrition, many other areas where India needs to radically move forward. But on digital payment side, a huge amount of work has been done in the last couple of months. We saw this downward trend in January, February, with cash coming back. But March, again, we're seeing upward movement. And I think this upward movement is likely to continue, simply because there's been so much of technological innovation in this area. First and foremost, UPI has seen a growth of 23%, close to 23%. But more important than that, that India has been able to build a totally interoperable system at the back end, and that has enabled very unique things to happen. The Bheem app is a very, very simple and very easy app to use. And Bheem Aadhaar brings in a huge amount of disruption. It enables you, using your iris or your fingerprint, to do any transaction. It'll make things so easy. So actually, as a strategy, if there are 400 million smartphones in this country, they'll be able to use a number of platforms, from wallets to Bheem app to UPI to USSD as well. But there are another 300 million who don't have smartphones at all, and they'll be using *99# that is USSD. But what Bhim Aadhaar enables you to do is what is happening today in Krishna and Godavari district of Andhra Pradesh, and is now started happening in Jharkhand, is that all ration shop dealers will then become the banking agent and would be able to do cash in and cash out. So when I go to take my ration, I mean, I may not have a phone at all because there are close to 300 millions who don't have a phone at all. And they go to take their ration card, they go to take the ration, and when they go to take their ration, on your phone, on the ration card, the ration dealer will be able to then use his mobile phone to not merely weigh his ration and give the ration, but also do cash in and cash out for the person.
So you said that this is already being experimented on in pilot project?
Yeah, it's been a very, very successful operation in Krishna and Godavari district. And this is going to get expanded across the country. But what will eventually happen in India is that every single smartphone will, each one of us will become a walking ATM. We will all use our Aadhaar number or our thumb impression or our iris to do digital transaction. And each one of us, using our mobile phone, can then become a merchant and do transaction for others. So banks can then make me a merchant. Actually, I'm today a merchant for IDFC Bank. And I can do transaction for you. It's not just person-to-person transaction, but I can also do a merchant transaction. And actually, the biggest disruption to my mind will happen as a consequence of Bhim Aadhaar, that in due course, that will make it so easy. And let me tell you that since I do transaction on Bhim Aadhaar, it's so easy, so simple, that I find handling debit card and credit card very complex and very difficult.
Okay. Several things that you spoke of. So since you've given us this vision of walking ATMs and all of us sort of being these walking ATMs, are you going to ensure that you're going to be putting the cash in these walking ATMs, Mr. Kant? Because the current ATMs seem to be struggling to keep up with that.
So, you know, Shereen, when I say walking ATM, I mean rich people like you have huge,
like me, is it?
Like me. Have huge bank accounts, and each one of us who have a bank account can then take money directly from our account and transfer it. When I talk about walking ATM, I mean that you don't have to go to an ATM at all. You will directly transfer money using your thumb impression from your mobile, because what the Bhim Aadhaar does is it has linked your mobile number and your Aadhaar number to your bank account. And in the last 13 days, actually, we have brought on board 7.26 lakh merchants. In just 13 days, we brought on board 7.26 lakhs merchant on board. And you know, what it does is that you can either do a mobile-to-mobile transfer, you can do a Aadhaar-to-Aadhaar transfer, or you can do a bank account-to-bank account transfer. And what I would suggest to all of you, because we've had close to 20 million downloads of Bhim, just do Bhim Aadhaar transactions. You'll find it so simple that you'll forget all your worries in the world. You'll forget all the hassles of doing financial transactions. It's the easiest thing in the world. And it's so simple, so easy, that you can do mobile-to-mobile, Aadhaar-to-Aadhaar, or account-to-account transfer. And the simplicity of it will enable it to make a huge disruption in India. And to my mind, over a period of time, we need a change of mindset. You know, the biggest thing with financial disruption or digital disruption is that we need to change mindsets of Indians. And I find it quite amazing that people in Krishna and Godavari district or the tribals in Jharkhand are able to accept this digital transaction much more easier than the elite class of Delhi and Mumbai. Because the people in Delhi and Mumbai have got so used to cash. Cash has become a part of their blood system. So you need to disrupt that. But people in rural areas and Krishna Godavari district do it very easily and very simply.
Okay, so several things that you've spoken of, and the two headlines that have come in, 20 million downloads of Bhim Aadhaar already, and 7.26 lakh merchants being added on over the last 13 days. Vaidyanathan, let me ask you, Mr. Kant is always great at throwing this picture to us, which makes us all feel optimistic and confident. But let's do a reality check. And I would imagine that this throws up a lot of opportunities for players like yourself as well. But where do you see the gaps? And what do you believe are the key challenges that still need to be addressed?
First of all, I think we saw an outstanding salesperson in Bhim in Mr. Amitabh Kant just now, and you can see the
He's
passion.
the brand ambassador.
Yeah, he's a brand ambassador, and of course our Prime Minister is a brand ambassador as well. And actually, it's incredibly easy. In fact, on my Twitter account, I've been telling people all the time, try Bhim at least once. You will just love it. You'll fall in love with it. It is true. And as many people as I've demoed it to, they've just been amazed. And the interesting thing is, by the way, that if you ask a forum like this of maybe 300 people, you'll be surprised that not more than maybe 10% of them would have actually tried Bhim. And that's one thing that we may need to fix. Basically, someone needs to go out there and passionately champion it. That's one. But let me talk about the other big issue that's there right now. Whenever we talk of financial inclusion, we usually tend to talk of financial inclusion on the deposits side and the bank account side, which is what our Jan Dhan has solved.
Yeah.
Maybe 25 crore accounts. The bigger issue, or I'll say equally big issue, is on the lending side. And there's a huge financial exclusion there. And in my mind, one of the key reasons for such financial exclusion is that almost every bank have a set of programs, and the programs are basically giving loans to people on the basis of whether they file income tax returns or not. And we know only 3% of India file tax returns, and then basically straight away exclude at least 50% of India. So there, in that sense, to solve that financial exclusion is a very big issue.
Okay.
And I think there, the new age technologies, which is artificial intelligence, etc., riding on the platform that has been built through the UPI and a singular identity of Aadhaar is going to make a big, big change. We are seeing such change.
Is the disruption already happening on the lending side?
It's happening in a big way. Let me tell you where. For example, you probably always heard of a loan in the form of a home loan or a car loan or education loan. That's what you've learned. If I asked you a loan, that's what you'll probably say. But new opportunity of lending is, what about lending to a college student for pocket money? What about lending for vocational courses, not the education loan of an MBA? Now, these are big, big markets, unaddressed to anyone, and this market opens up, it's probably a multiple of the known market, and this market is opening up in a big way, and we are seeing it, we are doing it. We built a 19,000 crore loan book in just 5 years doing these kind of technologies. It's real.
Okay, so, you're one of the players you said that is addressing this opportunity, but to really be able to grow this market sizably, what do you believe needs to be done, and what is the kind of impetus, if anything at all, that Mr. Kant and the government can provide?
In my opinion, the big factor that is yet to be done, despite the launch of Bhim and Aadhaar, is to actually make the existing ecosystem accept it and in a big way educate and advertise it. I'm finding Paytm, which is not a government, just an independent entrepreneur building up in Paytm, the number of full page ads, front page ads out there saying that, the day the demonetization announced, next morning they were out there with a full page ad saying that come on to Paytm.
Which led people to believe that they knew.
Yeah, I didn't see a similar ad like that from anybody else, or MPCA for that matter. So my comment therefore is that we should be far more out there in your face saying that these are step by step, let's move with it. We need to see a lot more action. One day I actually said that get some ambassadors, maybe just film actresses, maybe Sunny Leone, I don't know what you do, but just get
Sunny
there.
Leone, that's a thought. Mr. Kant, is that a thought that you're considering?
No, Shereen, the point therefore is, it's just it's a joke. But the point still is that, get it out there and get people to experience it and put it in their face and make people download it. I feel even sometimes the existing system is kind of threatened by these new technologies because money will move away from the banking system, and maybe to even get them to get back down on the threats because it's overall good for the system.
Yeah, a good point that you made. And Mr. Kant, I just want you to respond to the disruption that Vaidyanathan is talking about on the lending side, and that being perhaps the next wave that we're talking about when we speak of financial inclusion.
Yeah, it's very critical because what is really going to happen is that, we're going to become a very data-rich country. And as a consequence of that, we are opening up this whole world of data analytics. And physical banks are just going to go dead. there will be no concept of physical bank. The cost of a physical bank will be so high that everybody actually, and I really appreciate all these new banks which are, and the new payment banks which have gone on using technology, because the access to data will be so enormous that data analytics will enable you to lend to people. And actually, this will be the biggest driver
but even
of...
in developed markets, the bank is not dead. I mean, the physical bank is not dead by
so,
itself.
Yeah, so that's what makes India very, very different from the developed world. That India has this opportunity of making physical banks physically dead. India can make this quantum jump by 3 decades using technology now. And because you have access to mobile phones, you have biometrics, which nobody in the world has 1 billion biometrics, and because you have an interoperable banking system at the back, which no other country in the world has. All this combined together, 1 billion mobile, 1 billion biometrics, and an interoperable banking system in the world, this enabling of this data is the biggest boon for this country, that you will enable data to be analyzed, and a person living below the poverty line who used to run around these bankers, run around physical bankers to the bank managers trying to get a loan, will not require to be, that'll all be dead, because it'll be the data analytics which will give you an ability to lend to that person. And what Vaidya is saying is absolutely correct, that the biggest potential for India is to convert medium, small industries and people actually. I worked for long period with the fishermen community in Kerala, trying to bring new technology, outboard motors, new crafts, fiberglass crafts to them, or new nets. It was so difficult to give a loan to a person in that community. Today, that ability to analyze data and give loan to him, and therefore bank managers, their ability, their discretionary power will die out. It'll be the history, the track history. And therefore, India has this huge opportunity to lift, using technology to lift vast segments of our population above the poverty line.
Okay.
Sheer technology will make that happen.
Okay, several things that you've said, and Mr. Shah and Mr. Bansal, let me get you to respond to that. Do you, by the way, believe when Mr. Kant lays out this picture of physical banking as we know it today being dead, maybe in a few years down the line in India, and India being able to leapfrog developed markets?
Well, I completely endorse what he's saying. We as a country missed the agrarian revolution which occurred a few centuries back. We also missed the first industrial revolution and the second industrial revolution. We also missed the information technology revolution of the last century. This is our age, and this is our opportunity if we make it. All the opportunity is there before us, and I think Mr. Kant very validly argued about what the Prime Minister has many times talked about, the GEM Trinity. The Jan Dhan account, or in any case a bank account, an Aadhaar card, which is a tool of identity, and a mobile phone, which is a tool for transaction and communication. It's an exceedingly powerful combination to achieve scale, transparency, and ability to leapfrog the constraining physicality of the way we have done the transactions all along. And contrary to all the skeptics and doubting Thomases who always think about every new change in negative terms, this is really a huge, huge opportunity. Consider, for example, the Aadhaar card-based banking. Mr. Kant talked about the mobile and Aadhaar card,
yes.
but you don't even need a mobile for Aadhaar-based banking. All that you need is your fingerprint and the merchant to have that biometric device, and you're set for the transaction. Even the most unprivileged individual in the country should be able to carry out that transaction so far as the bank account is linked to the Aadhaar card and he has that biometric identity. So, in fact, more than worrying about whether this is real, whether it is possible, I think we all have to be ambassadors to take the revolution leapfrogs ahead. that is what our role and duty is relatively more privileged segments of the society is.
Sure.
Because this is something, while Mr. Kant talked about 1 billion mobile and billion biometric identities, I think we should have more than 1 billion bank accounts, and then I think we would have completed. So ultimately, what is finance or what is bank? If you see globally, the entire finance sector has been at a cutting edge of technology.
Sure.
In fact, the most heavily invested segment in technology is finance, and ahead of the time, invariably ahead of the curve. And therefore, finance is nothing but fluid technology
Sure.
floating on money, and this is our opportunity.
Okay. Mr. Bansal, let me get you to comment on that. I mean, Mr. Shah there concurring with what Mr. Kant has said and laying out the kind of opportunities that this opens up for India. What would be the key opportunities that you think that we can capitalize on as we move towards the mainstreaming of digitization?
I'm as optimistic as Mr. Amitabh Kant is, and therefore I also tend to ignore how far we are from where we need to be, but really enjoy the way journey has taken place in last couple of years. The progress we have made both on digitization and especially on the financial inclusion side has been a great journey. But on digitization, without being misunderstood, I also believe in as much in the progress we have made, but we are still have a long journey to do. If we look at the World Economic Forum's Network Readiness Index, we have actually come down from 68 to 91 in last 4 years. For whatever reason, we are going in the reverse direction. So, and as Mr. Kant said earlier, digital economy or digital society does not mean only digital payment or financial. Digital in real sense would happen when not only the financially we are digital, but healthcare, education, e-governance, sanitation, everything would be digital. And that's a journey which is a long journey.
So what do you see as being the key impediments? You said it's a long journey, but what do you see, if you could specify the key impediments so that I can get Mr. Kant to respond to that?
So there are 2 or 3 things which are big challenges. Digital infrastructure and therefore the connectivity. Despite the fact that we got 1 billion plus mobile connections, we have 450,000 towers across the country. The way we are moving internet, we are going for BharatNet. The Beam has been a great success. It is moving in the right direction, but the one big challenge is the population we have. We are not a country. We are a subcontinent. I mean, doing it for 140 crore people is not a joke, and it's gonna take its own time before we can reach the last human being in our country and sincerely call ourselves digital. The second most important thing to my mind is the literacy. Even if you look at digitization today, or even if you look at financial inclusion, one reason why we are not able to open bank account for everyone despite a great success of Prime Minister Jan Dhan Yojana is that last excluded segment. You need to have financial literacy over there. If you are not able to get the financial literacy right, the excluded will remain excluded. So I think these two big challenges.
Important points.
Shereen, I'd just like to add a point there. When we talk about whether the digital map ahead is going to be easy or not, and whether it can quickly be adapted, we must not forget that in this very same country, we have adapted to using cell phones so quickly and so efficiently. And 15 years back, we were riding the telecom with a really antiquated method. And today, virtually every person in the country has a mobile in hand and has somehow figured out how to do these things. Second point that I'd like to add there is that for the first time, we have developed a technology and solutions suiting our needs. It's not imported solution from some other place. It's a homegrown solution. The interoperable banking or the underlying architecture, as well as the factor of Aadhaar-based technology, which is very unique to us. All of these have been developed from within to suit our needs, to suit our peculiarities and our issues.
Yeah.
And that is a very, very powerful way
Absolutely,
to
and that's not something that we should scoff at all. Yes.
Sorry, if I can, one more futuristic challenge for digitization for Mr. Kant is not only about getting the infrastructure and including everybody into digital. I think if we were to visualize 3 to 5 years from now, the two challenges which we need to think about now is cybercrime and protection of
data
of people. And you know, those two will put together. If we don't create the policies and if we don't create the infrastructure to protect the cybercrime, that will be a bigger challenge to deal with than including everybody.
Okay, Vaidyanathan, you want to add to the list, and then I'll come to Mr. Kant.
No, I think we should continue.
Okay, let me then come to you, Mr. Kant. On the digital infrastructure side, I think even within the government, there is an acknowledgement and a realization that perhaps the pace could have been faster. If you were to specifically talk about BharatNet, the milestones that the government had set have not been achieved. What do you believe needs to be done on the digital infrastructure side? I know that you're also part of a committee that's set up with Mr. Chandrababu Naidu as the head of that committee to look at expanding digital infrastructure, including perhaps looking at options of importing POS machines and so on and so forth. So purely from a connectivity and a digital infrastructure preparedness, readiness point of view, where do things stand? What are the kind of targets that you're now working with?
Yeah, you know, Shereen, since you talked about POS machines, actually the number of POS machines that have been put in the last 3 months are more than what have been done in the last 10 years.
Sure.
So huge amount of attempt to push technology in. But I think the real challenge for the country is to spread internet across the country. You know, there are dark and gray spots, and the challenge this year is to cover about 150,000 panchayats out of the allocation of 10,000 crores that has been made. So the target this year is that we must reach out to 150,000 panchayats, and again another 150,000 panchayats for next year. But in addition to that, we are looking at several dark and gray spots, which we'll cover through Wi-Fi spots. And there's some very unique examples. I mean, in Chhattisgarh, there's this collector of Palnar district who's actually used a Wi-Fi spot to make his whole district, you know, become digital payment literate, less cash. So that is, to my mind, that is really the first and foremost challenge, spreading out physical internet everywhere. And there are some unique models of this, and states need to take the lead in this. What Andhra, for instance, did, using its electricity poles to spread optic network across, so that they've reached out to every single panchayat. Kerala is looking at making every village connect to internet in the next 3 years through the smart village concept. But I think a lot of that will get driven simply because a lot of youngsters, I think where the real disruption is happening is because youngsters are breaking the mold. I mean, if you look at health sector, the amount of new initiatives that have come in, look at Practo, look at Consio Medical, look at Portia, look at Mitra Biotech. These are all examples of technology which is spreading out. Or look at education. I mean, why is there's a huge revolution taking place in, you know, look at what Extra Marks is doing, just using technology to provide better education. I mean, a young girl today using Hello English has taught 9 million Indians how to speak English. 9 million Indians in 1 year. No educational school or institution has been able to do it. It's been done only through technology. Or look at what this guy, Baiju, in which Mark Zuckerberg has invested. Well, he's using technology to spread out across India. And therefore, you need many young Indians who are sitting here to really disrupt the model. That's the way India will grow. It will not grow physically. Better quality will happen, better, we'll be able to improve our quality in health and education through open sources. And therefore, health and education the big revolution is digitally is upon us, whether we like it or not. And it'll happen through young entrepreneurs.
But is the government going to play a role in that? You talked a lot about a lot of the startups who are using the power of technology to try and get access. But what about the government itself? So the Niti Aayog is looking at education and healthcare. We've got a new national health policy in place which promises healthcare to everybody. But is there any sort of pilot project that we can now expect on the digital front, at least as far as these sectors are concerned?
No, so we really pushed we were involved in the digital payment movement, and we pushed the district collectors into bringing out, we supported them in a vast number of ways. And we said that they will become the key drivers on the ground. So at Gram Panchayat level, at district levels, all of them have done very, very innovative work across the country. I mean, you look at Bhavnagar in Gujarat, you look at Bokaro, all young collectors who've made a difference in digital payment. And therefore, according to me, you need a huge number of, we are willing to support all startups in health and education. But one of the key things we are doing is like we did in ease of doing business, we're ranking states. We are ranking states on education, on health. We've created outcomes on education, on health, and states are competing on that. And similarly, on digital index, how well is a state equipped digitally? We are going to do this comparison, and therefore states will compete with each other on education, health, digital index, and that will really transform India. Nothing better than states competing. In a large country like ours, there should be competitive and cooperative federalism, as the Prime Minister said, and that spirit of competition will happen through these outcome-based competitions among states.
Vaidyanathan.
See, Mr. Kant correctly pointed out about how much we need to develop the internet economy, how we need to open up the infrastructure. Apart from that, there is something we need to do on the regulatory front, which is opening up the number of players who are playing this ecosystem. Now, basically, if you look at the structure of the Indian financial services system, 70% is owned by the government of India.
Yes.
In the form of state-owned banks.
Yes.
Now, since they're all governed by the same CBC, CBI, and all the other concerns that they all have, typically everybody has the same programs. Now, when they have the same programs, obviously, no one's really looking at figuring out how to finance the unfunded and so on and so forth. Now, if you want to say that, look, apart from opening up the internet infrastructure, how do we make use of it, the other part of it? We need to bring a lot more number of players. In other words, we need players. For example, we could just say that, okay, mobile companies have been given mobile banks. Now, if we were to say that apart from being payment banks, we are also allow you to lend credit. Then a telecom company could probably give somebody a credit of 4,000 rupees on the phone, and as part of the billing process, they might collect the 4,000 rupees back. Now, that could open up a completely new era of lending that today we don't do. Today, for example, most lenders would say that, look, I need a minimum tenor of 1 year. Below 1 year, it doesn't make sense for me. It's a losing proposition. There might be another lender who might come and say, hey, hold on, I can do a lending even for 3 months because my model is different. I'm entirely on the internet. So, apart from opening up the internet infrastructure, we will just need to introduce a large number of players which are not state-owned and be a far more liberal in opening up. In fact, even the 10 SFBs that have come up is a good development, but they're not going to shake the Indian banking system at all because the existing income banks are just too big and too large and too much benefits in terms of having a control of the ecosystem. We will need probably 100 or 200 new banks to actually make a shake of the system and take financing as well as financial inclusion, both on the liability side as the asset side, deepen the system.
Mr. Kant, you want to respond to Vaidyanathan?
And Mr. Kant has a role to play in it because he's got to make this a facilitative environment, actually.
So, I'm a great believer in the market. I mean, either you perform or you perish. So, if there are public sector banks, they have to be dynamic to the reality of today. If they have to bring in the best technology, they have to reach out to their customers. And if they're not able to perform, they'll go bust. So the right ecosystem will take care of it. Either we create the right ecosystem for the banks, or the other banks will penetrate the markets, or small players will get in. So the market will take care of this. And therefore, they have to be, existing players have to be extremely flexible. They have to be the best adopters of technology. And that's why I find it quite amazing that all the hard work actually in recent times has been put in by public sector banks. You know, all this onboarding of merchants, going in for Beam, going in for Beam Aadhaar, that's all been driven by public sector banks.
They don't have a choice, sir. The government is telling them to do it.
No, good, but they're all driven it. And I'm glad that HDFC and ICICI also have pushed for Beam Aadhaar because they realize that with an interoperable system, that's the future.
Okay, we've got the last couple of minutes here. So if anybody in the audience has a question that you would like to ask our panelists, if you could raise your hands, we'll try and get a microphone across to you. Yes, Mr. Mittal. Yeah, can someone help with the microphone, please?
Well, Mr. Amitabh Kant said that we'd like the internet to spread. There is a policy hang-up, and that is, for example, the Department of Telecommunication has gone and sued or filed a case against Delhi Metro as well as the railways, saying that you have to pay X% on your total turnover, not only on the internet use, but on the total turnover, and the matter is in court. So there are some of these hang-ups and issues, and similarly, on photovoltaic, for example, which is the government policy to encourage it, especially rooftop solar, if you own a house and you put up PV panels on your roof, and you let out your house, the tenant would say that I will pay you for the power I use, and if you have an extra generation, I will not pay you for that. But then you have to charge the service tax on the power supplied to the tenant. Whereas if the person takes power directly from the government, then there is no tax. So there are these small issues which need to be resolved to be able to encourage people to have more internet and more PV panels on the rooftops.
No, so I greatly appreciate this input. I wasn't aware of this case and metro-related issue. And, you know, if you bring it, if you just put it in writing and put it on a mail to me, I'll try and put this policy issue and I'll try and find the best, you know, I'll do my best for it.
Well, there you go. We've managed to get Mr. Kant to give you an assurance. Yes, sir. If you can stand up, please, it'll be easier for them to identify you and get you a microphone. And I'd request you to keep your questions short, please.
Mr. Kant, you refer to health and all these things. Can you ensure that this data will be confidential? Because nowadays such a few companies are misusing this facilities, data. Every day, even Rashtrapati gets a phone call for loan and all these things. So all people will be bothered for this type of data. How you are ensuring this type of thing?
So, you know, if you look at Aadhaar Act, for instance, there are very strong privacy provisions in this. You know, I've always debated, I'm a man who believes in privacy. I'm a great believer in privacy of data. And I've always, and this is a worldwide debate actually, and I've always personally wondered whether we should stop all technological growth and just look at privacy. And I've debated the pros and cons, and I've always arrived at this suggestion in my mind that actually if you were to debate between privacy and the technological progress that you will make, it's important to adopt technology with all your might and move forward. And privacy is important. It should be taken care of as it has been done in the Aadhaar Act. But that should be, the advantages of technological leapfrogging are far more than privacy issues. But India definitely in the future needs to take care of privacy. I'm a strong believer in privacy, and I think in due course, the country will definitely move towards a strong Privacy Act.
Yes, please go ahead.
In this country, prior to this, what kind of privacy did you really enjoy? In most of the things, your data and everything has been out in the public. Suddenly, we seem to become hyper-conscious about some mythical idea of privacy and all that, and trying to prevent progress using such really surreptitious ideas. In a country like UK, if you travel in London, they say on an average you are photographed about 14 times in a day. What kind of privacy you are talking about? So, at the end of the day, the biometrics driven architecture has a very, very strong capability to prevent misuse. But no human endeavor can really be completely sterile and safe in every aspect. To try to hunt for that is really trying to deny progress by using very poor means.
I don't think anyone is trying to deny progress
almost boils
and
down
I don't
to
think
that.
the debate is around some mythical concept of privacy. I think the debate is around data protection, confidentiality, which is a legitimate ask
Shereen.
of the
No,
citizen.
it is couched in that language, but really effort is to kind of scuttle it.
Okay.
And that's where the frustration should be there. This country has a real chance to progress, and that progress cannot be achieved based on antiquated models of the past. Here is an opportunity. We are ready, we are prepared, really more prepared than Western countries are today to exploit this situation. And yet, for really very petty issues, we try to argue and endlessly debate. That's where the frustration.
Okay.
No, well, no doubt about it. It's a serious issue, and I think the infrastructure is in place. But I must say, for all the people who are concerned about security, they must do one more thing. When they're downloading apps, well, they're taking I agree for a set of agreements which they never read, and it goes on, can I take your access to your contacts, your camera, they take care of the whole life, and we're getting on with it, and we're worried about security. So let's start with, for those of you who are concerned about security, can you just see your agreement before you click on it?
Okay. So we're pretty much out of time, so let me end by getting wrap-up comments from each of our panelists. And Vaidyanathan, I'm going to start by, getting wrap-up comments from you. The discussion that we've had today is how do you actually mainstream the idea of digital India? And it goes beyond financial inclusion, as we've clearly articulated through the course of this discussion. If I were to ask you to identify 2 or 3 things that you believe should now be the priority, we're at this point already. We're at the inflection point, we're at the tipping point, but for this to actually tip the scales, the 1 or 2 things that you believe the government ought to do, and also the private sector, and of course the public sector.
Okay. First of all, I definitely believe that with the arrival of UPI, India has suddenly created an extraordinary platform which has now taken India past a tipping point, so to say, in making financial inclusion happen and to make digitization happen. There's no doubt about it. I think the universal acceptance of that, and clearly it is the world leader in that practice or that infrastructure. Now, in my opinion, if there's one thing to be done, which will need to be done, is to enable, like I said, more players to participate in the system. It's a walled garden, and in the walled garden, only established players have a big play.
Yeah.
The new players who are coming in, which are largely fintechs, so to say, people tend to look at them as if they are some piranhas who are just crushing and finishing off the existing players. It's not true. They're just basically opening up new markets which never existed before. And therefore, to allow and encourage, and in fact, even through the regulatory system, to allow more players to come in and in a free manner to come in and play this game will be very, very important. I would therefore say India needs 100 more new banks which can access money from the retail consumer and lend back to the consumer, and that will make a big change to India in addition to the internet program.
Okay, 100 more banks is what Vaidyanathan is putting on the table as his big idea. Over to you, Mr. Bansal.
Yeah. So as far as the 3 parts to my thoughts. One is whatever we have done has been a great journey. Just the 2 quick things, PM Jan Dhan Yojana and demonetization. Very quickly, how we got the country to move on to the digital payments and financial inclusion, the kind of crores of accounts got open. To my mind, second thing is that financial inclusion of the country is already on the way. And with the speed it is going, unless we stop it and destroy it, very soon we will be reaching that. I'm not worried about that. I'm more worried about to bring education on the digital side. If we bring education, literacy to every nook and corner of the country, it will help in both ways. One, education, which is a primary need of every human being, and 2,
and a fundamental right.
It will give impetus to everything else we do.
Okay. Mr. Shah. One big idea.
Sorry?
The one big idea that you believe ought to be taken forward to make this a reality, the idea of digitizing India.
No, no big idea. Idea is already there. We just need to implement it. There is nothing more to be done. If we are less skeptical and more positive, all of the change will occur.
All right, Mr. Kant, I'll give you the final say, sir. What can we expect now? We're at the start of a new financial year, sir. Leave us with the headlines that we should expect in the year forward.
No, I think we should give a big push in terms of regional languages. You know, the big picture is you need to get 1 billion people up and running on digital India. Across health, across education, and that can only happen if you push for all this in regional languages. And India must become the biggest disruptionist country in the world as far as digital movement is concerned. I mean, we are just the beginning phase, according to me. The new players, the payment banks, you know, look at this. In the last 40 years, we've given 7 bank licenses. In the last 21 months, we've given about 23 bank licenses. So this is, and you know, with all these new payment banks, there's a huge disruption in the offing. The new telecom companies are going to drive the change. The new financial technology players are going to drive the change. So India is in the midst of the biggest disruption that has ever taken place anywhere in the world.
So dial India for disruption. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here and giving us your thoughts and your insights on what the journey ahead looks like and what the government as well as other stakeholders involved should focus on. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I would request all the panelists to please be seated. We're going to start with the polling. We can have a much bigger round of applause. This session was very insightful. Thank you all for shedding more enlightenment on us. It was truly exciting. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's time for polling. Mobile phones down and you pick up your voting pads. Here we start. Technology can create the same impact for healthcare, education and land reforms as financial inclusion. Those who agree, press A. Those who disagree, press B. Those who are neutral, press C. And if you can't say, press D. 15 seconds. Do not forget to press OK after you've punched in your choice. And let's see what the polling reveals. There you go, massive 89% agree. So there we go. Can we have a round of applause for that? We can do better. I think so. Everybody was very much settled on the chocolate mud over there as the desert. So everybody liked. So the polling also says that we're going towards something more fruitful. So thank you to our panelists. I would request Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal to kindly come on stage and felicitate our esteemed group of panelists. First and foremost, ladies first, Ms. Shereen Bhan. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Up next, Mr. Amitabh Kant. Mr. V. Vaidyanathan. Mr. Akhil Bansal. And Mr. Bharat Shah. Once again, thank you for joining us and taking out your precious time out of your busy schedule and being a part of this summit. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Just to let you know, there are feedback forms which are being distributed on to each and every one of you. It's a request to kindly fill it as soon as possible. Our staff will come and collect it from you. So do go through the feedback form.